Hello, my name is Steve Waldron, and I'm the GIS coordinator and instructor here in the city of Richmond. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate to our existing ArcGIS Online users how they can create nice, polished web applications from their web maps in ArcGIS Online. One important note right from the start is that one of the last slides you will see in this presentation today points out a specific ESRI online web course that you can take to do a hands-on web application yourself. So let's get started. Just to give you a refresher of where you've been and where you may be going. You should have already completed our ArcGIS Online training curriculum. So you have an ArcGIS Online account, you've taken our Part 1 class, you've taken our Part 2 class, and you may have even done an online learning plan. Since you've completed this, you are available to take these electives. The current class is called Going from Web Maps to Web Apps, or here it's called Web Apps in ArcGIS Online. Okay, what's the difference between a web map and a web app? Well, you start with the web map to author your content and configure the appearance and the behavior. An example may be you configure pop-ups and labels. Web apps are things that are centered around the use of your web map, which contains your subject matter. A web app is a polished user interface, and it's just using one of your web maps. Web apps can be mapping applications, which we'll look at today, but they could even be things like story maps or dashboards, which we have other elective classes you can take to learn about those. Let's review all the skills you've already picked up because these are important towards making web applications. So you're already on your way. So what I want you to know is that the work you do in the web map translates into and is used by the web app that you are going to create. So you already know how to make a web map. You know how to find and add our GIS layers. You know how to symbolize the GIS layers the way you like them to be. You know how to control layer transparencies, setting scales at which layers draw. You know how to configure pop-ups. You know how to do labels. You also know how to organize the content in your workspace. You know how to share your content so that it might be something that's available to everyone for the public, or maybe it's restricted to just the organization or a group. And remember, since we're talking about making web apps, we recommend from our training that you should have in your workspace a folder with this prefix of app, and that is where your application and your web map should reside. As customary in most of these training videos, we'll go through a slide deck, and from time to time, we'll jump out into ArcGIS Online to perform a demo, and we will toggle back and forth. So beginning this process, this slide shows you the steps to begin. So from a web map, there will be a share button. You would click on that for number one. Number two, you're going to decide how you want to share it, and you will create a web app by clicking on this button. The third thing that happens is this dialog will open, and you will be able to choose the first option, configurable apps, and there's a long list of apps that are available for you. Under the configurable apps, we are going to use Showcase a Map as our option. And whenever you choose a particular template to use, you can always preview it before deciding you want to use it. In addition, there will be a question mark next to select a configurable app that you can click on, and you can read about all these different out-of-the-box applications. When you create a web app, just like when you create a web map, you're going to be prompted to provide basic information, which becomes the first part of your metadata. So you'll have to provide a title, you'll have to provide tags, you should provide a good summary, and you should save it in your project folder. So let's get started by jumping out into ArcGIS Online. Here, I'm going to navigate to my workspace. So I clicked on Content. You can see I'm logged in as Steve, and I have a folder I created called app_web app demo. I have a web map I created already. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to click on it. From the overview page, we'll take a look in the map viewer, and we'll see what's in here. We can see we've got the city boundary, we've got neighborhoods, which are turned off right now, but if I turn them on, we can see them. And we have address labels and parcels, which turn on once we zoom in to a closer scale. So this is the starting point from the web map. Here's the share button we talked about. I clicked on it. I will elect to share this with the city of Richmond. If I wanted it to be public, I could choose everyone, but I'm going to keep it internal. And then I'm just going to click on Create a Web App. So here we can see a list of configurable apps on the first tab. I've decided we're going to use Showcase a Map, and we're going to use a basic viewer. We can always preview the app to see what it will look like. So here we can see I've got my web map, but it has a different appearance. That's because it's a web app at this point. It's much more polished looking. It has some controls and tools up here, such as if we wanted to change the base map, we could change the base map. Okay, so there are just some basic tools that are available. I'm going to go ahead and close this tab, and I decide, yep, it's the basic viewer that I want to use. So we're going to click on Create Web App, and I'm going to have to fill out the initial metadata. So I'm going to change the title of this to be an app. So this will be the Web App Course Demo app. I'm just going to leave the tags alone. And for the summary, I'm going to say this is an application to demonstrate functions to students, like that. It doesn't matter. I'm going to delete it when I'm done. And what folder do I want to save it in? So I'm going to save it in my app folder, and I'll hit done. So it's building the app. And here you can see I'm in a place where I can start to configure this application. Let's go back to the presentation, however, and go to the next slide. Whichever configurable app you choose, there will be a few things that you can configure. There will be a series of tabs across the top here where you have general, theme, options, and search. When we click on these, we can come down below and we can configure them. At any time you apply a configuration, you can save your work and you can launch the app to see how it looks. So let's jump in. First, you'll notice I'm under the General tab. So let's come up with a title. I think the title I'll use is called Steve's Map. It looks like there's an option here for subtitle. So I'm going to put information technology. And I'm going to check this option for a splash screen. So a splash screen is something you see when the application starts up initially. So I'm going to give it a title. This is my splash. And for the content, I'm going to use kind of a larger font, and I'm just going to put you better watch out. Whatever the message I want to be there. It could be some information you want the person to read before they enter the site and use the application maybe. And what do you want to see on the button text? I'll say I want it to say I agree. So let's save our work. And I'm going to click the launch button. So here is the splash screen. It's got the title I entered. It's got the message I wanted. This could be a disclaimer, right? And here's the button. So if they click I agree, the splash screen will go away. If they don't, that annoying splash screen will just sit there and obstruct their view. So only by clicking I agree will that disappear. Okay, I'm going to close this. You can see I'm back in my configuration. Now I'm going to move over to the next tab called Theme. Just a few basic things you can do. You could change the color if you don't like the header color. So maybe I want to use this green color. So I just changed the header color. And you see the toolbars across the top here? Well, maybe I want to change it for choose a layout option down here to be a sidebar. So if I choose this option, it will display the tools along the side of the map instead. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to launch the app so we can see what it looks like. So here we can see it's using that annoying green color I chose, and the tools are on the side. And here's my splash screen, still present. Okay, it opened it in a separate tab in my web browser, so I can go ahead and close it and get back to the tab that contains my configuration. I'm going to change the header color. I can't live with that color. I'll use orange. Maybe it'll be a little bit better. This time I'm going to move over here to options. And under the options, you'll see there's a lot of different options. I'm just going to show you how there are some tools that we can use. Maybe I want the measure tool to be available. So look at the toolbar. And maybe I want the overview map tool as well. So when I click save, the toolbar is going to be updated with the new tools. I'm going to launch it to test it out. And we can see this is the overview map tool. So if I click on it, it just opens this overview map. So as you move around, if you zoom in, it shows you where the zoomed in section on the main map is appearing more regionally. So that's like an overview. And the other one we used was called the measure. So here's that measure tool. So if we want to measure an area or a line or a point, let's do a line. Um, let's measure the distance from one side of the river to the other along this bridge. We can see it's 0.34 miles, or we change it to feet. It's 1,800 feet. So that's the measure tool. So these are all just the standard tools that come out of the box with this app. Like there's a print one, there's an information one, there's just some standard tools. I'm going to close this because I'm done reviewing it. And let's go to the last option here, the last menu option for search. And I'm going to update the settings to only use the Richmond locator, we'll say. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to launch the app. And up here, I'm going to do a search. I'm going to look for 1010 West 45th Street. And it found it. Okay. I'm going to close out of this. I'm done previewing it. And I'll show you something neat about the search tool up here. It doesn't have to be used exclusively for addresses or intersections. So I'm going to turn this off, and instead it recognizes the layers that we have in our web map. Remember I showed you before, it had the city boundary, it had neighborhoods, it had addresses and parcels. Well, let's choose neighborhoods and save it. And then I'm going to launch it. And I'm going to type in the fan. So it searched the neighborhoods layer and it found a match against the fan. If we come up here, I can turn on the neighborhoods and it's highlighting where the fan feature is located. So the search option will work with any GIS layer that you have in your map, or it will use a locator service, which will automatically appear in this list as well. Okay, let's go to the last one. Um, oh, I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the close button. I'm going to go back to my workspace to show you what it looks like. So I clicked on content. Here I am in my folder. It's got that original web map in it, but now it also has a web mapping application. If we click on the mapping application to open its overview page, you of course would come in, you would add a description, you would probably apply a thumbnail, make sure you have good tags, but here's the URL. If we click here, we copied the URL. So now we could use that URL. We could email it to someone. We could embed it as hyperlink on a Word, on a web page, and have a link directly to our application. Okay, I'm going to get back to my content. We've just seen one example of a configurable app template. You can figure out how to use these configurable apps. And remember, there's online help if you want to learn how to use any of the other versions. But now I'm going to show you something I think is a little more exciting. You can customize your own web apps with what's called the Web App Builder, and there's no coding involved. So these aren't just templates. This is like starting from scratch. So I'm going to go back to my presentation and let's take a look at the Web App Builder. What is it? It's an application that lets you build 2D, 3D web apps. It's all click and configure. So just like we saw previously using templates, it's the same concept of just doing configurations. It offers much more freedom than the predetermined configurable app that we just used. Nothing's pre-thought out in the design of it. You come up with the design yourself. In addition to the look and feel, you're going to have access to all kinds of what are called widgets, configurable widgets that you can use for certain functionalities in your web application. So let's review the steps. The steps are identical. You're going to start with a web map. You're going to click share. You're going to decide how you're going to share it, and you're going to click web map, create a web app, sorry. Instead of going to configurable apps, you're going to choose the tab called Web App Builder instead and provide the basic info and click Get Started. So let me catch up to what the slide is showing us here. by going into ArcGIS Online. Remember, it always starts from the map. So I'm going to open the web map. I'm going to go to the map viewer. It's the same web map we used before. It's got the layers we're familiar with. I'm going to click share. I'm just going to share it with the organization, create a web app from it. Instead of here, I want to go to Web App Builder. For the title, I'm going to change the title to be App 2. The first one I created was called App. And for the summary, I'm just going to type this is a demo app. I'm going to be deleting this when I'm done. I'm going to save it in my app folder and click Get Started. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the slideshow to talk about this interface. Go to the next slide. So the way this works is very similar. There'll be a series of items across the top here. You'll fill them out from left to right, starting with a theme. So when you click on theme, there's a variety of different templates you can choose for the theme you want. And you have the same functionality you had before where you can save your configuration and you can launch your app to see what it looks like. So let's jump back into ArcGIS Online. And here we're on theme. Currently we're on foldable theme. But look as I click on these different themes. This one's called a billboard theme. You see how it changed? The title bar disappeared. Um, Here's a launchpad theme. So it looks a little different. Put some tools here, put some tools down here. It's got a different appearance. Here's something called a tab theme. Looks a little different. So you can decide which one you want to use. Here in DIT, we use the foldable theme almost exclusively for all of the apps that we create. So the parcel mapper, everyone's familiar with, the zoning mapper, those kinds of things. The foldable theme works out really well for us. We like it a lot. Then down here, you can choose the color scheme that you want. There's only 8 colors to choose from unless you want to do a custom one. But I'm going to choose this blue one. This is what we typically use. And for layout options, this just moves the controls around to different positions. So if we click here, notice the tools got moved down. There's a little picture here that shows you where the tools will get moved to. Okay, we like this option, this top left one. I'm going to save my work. And I'm going to go back to the presentation. So that's what's involved in the theme. Next, let's click on map. Even less time spent on map. What this means is you can choose a different web map if you want to apply this application on top of. We started off by going into the web map and clicking share. So you pretty much know that's the web map you're going to be using, but it doesn't have to be. You could always take a web app and you could go to edit it and change the reference map, web map that's being used. So there's not a lot of options here. I just take all the defaults. You can probably go ahead and just take all these defaults. Moving on to widget. Widgets are where you're going to spend most of your time. In this top section, these are the out-of-the-box widgets. These are the tools that you see here on the left-hand side and across the top. And whenever you hover your mouse over a widget, it will highlight in red, and it will also display a little eyeball on the top right and a little pencil on the bottom right. The top eyeball just means do you want to see it or not see it, so you can turn them on or off. And the pencil means you can edit the widget. So let's go in and take a look at that. I'm going to skip over map and go to widget, and I'm going to click on my location, which is right here. Notice it's highlighted in red. If I don't want to see it, I can turn the visibility off. So now that widget will no longer be used in my web app. I'm going to go to the search widget. Okay, the search widget is the same one we modified previously. I'm going to configure it though by clicking on the pencil. And I'm going to remove the VGen geocoder and the world geocoder. So we're only left with the Richmond locator. And instead of calling it search up here, I'm sorry, instead of calling it find address or place as the placeholder text, let's change it to something called let's find a location. I'm going to click save, and I'm going to launch the app. So here you can see it now says, let's find a location. That's what we wanted it to say. And that other tool is no longer present. So I'm going to close this. I've done previewing it. And I'm going to go back to our presentation. Down here is where you can have additional widgets. So these are where these are widget positions. There currently is no tool there. These are what you can modify. So in this particular one, you can have up to 5 tools. You can have fewer than 5 if you want, but you can't have more than 5. Let me go to slide 13. Okay. When you click on the gray widget buttons, it will open up this dialog to choose a widget. So you're going to need to select one of these. For our demos, we're going to use the query widget. So let me show you how that works by going back. Notice as I hover over, the widget positions are highlighting in red. So you can arrange where you want the different tools to appear. I'll go to the first position by clicking on it. And here is the list of the available widgets. Okay, there's a bunch of them. I want to choose query. And I'll hit OK. Let me go back to my slide presentation, make sure I'm not missing anything. So if you did choose the query widget, you need to configure it. So when you hover over the tool, whatever you put here is the message people will see. And you'll see there's an option called Learn More About This Widget. This is how you can learn what the widget is and how to configure it. Coming back to the presentation, let's start by clicking Learn More About This Widget. So it's going to open a new tab in our web browser. And it takes us to the ArcGIS Online documentation. And here we can see it's reviewing the query widget. Describes how to configure it. Lots of good documentation in here of how to use it, how to configure it. Over on the left, you can see these are all the different widgets. So you can come and you can read and learn what each of these widgets does and how to configure them. It's all right here. It's all in the documentation. Very good documentation. Okay, there are 2D widgets. And if you get into the 3D world, there are 3D widgets as well. So this is where you go, very important. This is where you go to really learn how to use these widgets and what they can do for you. Having returned, I don't want this to say query. I want it to say find neighborhood. And I'm going to click on new query, and the target is going to be neighborhoods. Okay, so this is the layer in the web map we created that we want to be the focus. Over here under filters, I'm going to configure the query criteria for querying neighborhoods. So there's a little gear here I can click on. I'm going to create a new expression. And I'm interested in name is, and there's different ways you can have them be provided a list of unique names or predefined if you want to provide your own, or type of value. I'm going to say type of value, but I'm also going to use this checkbox here to ask for values. So the prompt is going to be name is, and I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to come over here to configure the results. And I want the results to use a certain symbol. So I don't want a green fill with a green outline. I prefer to use one that looks like this. And I'll click OK. Whoops. Yep, I'll click OK. And I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to launch it to see how it looks. See, I can see the progress of my work. So if I hover, it says Find Neighborhood. If I click on it, notice it says Name is. And if I want to, I could type in, for example, Jackson Ward and hit Apply. So it searched the neighborhoods layer and it found that neighborhood and zoomed in on the map. If we come over here and look at the layer list, it actually was added as a layer in my layers list. I could turn it on or off. There's some more options of things you can do with it. Like I can set the transparency if I wanted, right? I'm going to make it a little bit transparent so I can see through it. You can change the position of it within the table of contents here. All kinds of neat stuff that you can do. Let me come back to the query tool. There's also more tools or options here. And you can like zoom to it. You can flash it. You can remove this result. So if I remove it and I close the tool, we can see the layers no longer in the list. So you could do multiple queries and each query result will be added as a new layer. All right, let's configure another widget, but let's pretend we need an app to be used by a coworker to find neighborhoods and then to be able to find all the properties in that neighborhood and to export those properties as an Excel table. Maybe that's something that they need to regularly do. So we're going to go back to configure. I'm going to close this. Let's go to the widget in this next position. And we're going to use the select tool. It's what you can use to select features. And in our analysis, we want the user to be able to select properties. So I'm going to choose select. I want this to say select parcels. And I'm going to update selecting the tool by being able to select by polygon. So we can digitize our own unique polygon. And the selected features, I want those to appear reddish, a red color. And I'm going to allow exporting selected features. So I'm going to put a check mark next to that option because I want to be able to export the parcels to an attribute table. Which layers can we select? Well, I don't want to be able to select any of these layers except for the parcels. And I'll hit OK. Then I'm going to save it and I'm going to launch it to see how it behaves. Okay, I launch it. Let's do a search for Jackson Ward again. Apply it. Zoomed me right in where I need to be. And I think I'm going to adjust the color transparency. I could have done this on the configuration of the tool, but I didn't, so I can adjust it now if I want. Let me go back and make sure it's turned on. Okay, it's turned on. And now I'm going to use the new tool, the new widget I just created. So I'm going to click on select parcels, see how the message is what I typed. And I'm interested in selecting parcels. I can move this out of the way. So I'm going to digitize my own polygon. And I'm going to double click to end. And look, with that polygon I digitized, it selected all the parcels. That was my target. And having done that, I have the option, there's 856 parcels. I have the option here to export to a CSV. So I can open that. And here are all those parcels in Jackson Ward. Pretty awesome. So we configured that second tool. Let me hit the clear button. We'll clear my selection. And I'll go ahead and close this. And I'll get back to configuring my app and we'll go to the slide deck. Okay, so I showed you how you can research what widgets do. That's how I learned to use the select tool. That's how I learned to use the query tool. There are a whole bunch of widgets that you can learn to use. I pointed out that the widget instructions are all available online. It's excellent help. We kept this in the slide deck so that you would have the URL and you could find it immediately. You probably would want to bookmark it. Now we can go to the last item called attribute. So this is where you attribute things and you can put in a title, who it's provided by. You can put a logo on there. You can put a link under the logo. So let's go do that. We're basically branding it at this point, right? Currently it's got this little three cubes and a title that I don't like. So let's go to attribute or attribute. And we're going to call this department XYZ application. And we'll say provided by the city of Richmond. And here we can do a logo. So I want to customize this by uploading a logo. I know I have a logo available to me under here. Images. Okay, here's the city logo. I'm going to use that. And for the text under it, City of Richmond. And for the link, https www.rva.gov. I'll hit OK. I'm going to save and launch to check it out. save it, launch it. Okay, now we can see it's got the logo, it's got the title and the provided by message I put in there. Looks like there's a hyperlink when I hover over it. So if I click on it, it opens a new tab and it takes me to rva.gov. Okay, so I've successfully applied attribution. I've branded it. Okay, I'm basically done. Let me go back to my contents and we can see there's my application, my second application I created. So I made this one with the web app builder. This first one was done using the custom template that came out of the box. Okay, wrapping things up, just a word. Your web apps should really be tailored and focused, right? You're trying to provide something for a user that's easy to use. Don't overwhelm them with too many layers, too many tools. Keep it focused, keep it tailored to what they need to do. Now, you are being assigned to locate and take an ArcGIS Online web course yourself. Remember, because you're a member of the City of Richmond and you have an ArcGIS Online account, you have web courses available to you for free. So what I want you to do is to go to this URL. You need to sign in with your ArcGIS Online account in order to get classes to unlock. I'm going to want you to search for Web App Builder, and you'll find this class. I want you to take this class so that you can create your first web app following this Esri class. This slide deck that we're using is available from the city's orientation videos page from which you started this course. So you have the slide deck. You can always come back and review the steps and get this URL from it. So what's next? Again, you can get the slide deck that we used for the presentation. Be sure to do that web course I just pointed out if you really want to get hands-on. And I'd like you to send an email to this email address to tell us that you have just taken the Web Maps to Apps. I'm sorry, you've taken the Web Maps to Web Apps class so that we can update our records. That's it. Thank you and good luck.